Well, I think it's a great opportunity for the Browns. One of the franchises has been at the basement of the NFL to be able to look inside what they're going to do. I don't think it could be a distraction. Anytime you're 0-16, you're picking first in the draft, you need as many eyeballs on you as possible. And now the fans are able to see they have an influx of talent. They also have a new offensive coordinator in Todd Haley. So it's nice to see what they're going to do offensively. I believe that can be very entertaining. And they got enough names around their roster. Jarvis Landry coming over from the Dolphins, entertaining guy. Baker Mayfield, I believe, to be an entertaining guy. They have enough good players with big enough names that are worth watching.
Listen, I love Hard Knocks. I love watching Hard Knocks. Almost no matter what team they pick, it's interesting. And they picked a team this year that's got a bunch of storylines. A coach that's 1-31 in his last 2 years. The #1 pick of the draft, charismatic quarterback in Baker Mayfield. Obviously, you mentioned Todd Haley will become a storyline here. I think a lot of the non-diehard football fans don't know who Todd Haley is, but this guy was an NFL head coach who is fiery, who will have to monitor his language somewhat when the cameras are around. So as a fan, I love it. I do think it puts Hugh Jackson and any organization in a bit of a tough spot. There's a reason that John Dorsey, the GM there, had been very anti-doing Hard Knocks until the NFL said, you're doing it. And he came out yesterday with some coaches like, after talking to some people and thinking about some things, I'm sure the business office loves it. Like as far as the marketing
100%.
of the team. But I also think for some of the young players, and the Browns have one of the youngest rosters in the NFL, it can set narratives or storylines that follow them a little bit unfairly. And so that's the part of it that I would have some trepidation about if I were a coach or a player on the team.
I'm looking forward to it. Listen, for whatever you want to think of Baker Mayfield and who the guy is and who, what he thinks he could do with this Cleveland Browns team, I think a lot of people want to see whether that's going to translate into the NFL. It's like I said earlier, it's like a soap opera, and it's addicting, and it's a way for the sports world to sort of open itself up and bring other people in to get sort of an idea of what happens on a football team. I don't think people know about.
CC, some of the Pied Piper stuff you've talked about with Baker, the way guys follow him, the natural leader. Do you think that'll be able to be conveyed on the show?
I think it's hard because you're just at the beginning of training camp and he's not named to be the starter. I don't know if they're going to be able to grab that narrative from the football operations people, from the coaches at Oklahoma. This is what Baker Mayfield has done when he's walked on at 2 different colleges.
All right, we'll see.
When you have a lot of players that don't have experience and have experience with the camera being around them, it's a very, very young, even franchise because they've changed so much as far as general manager, front office, their overall experience together in the NFL together is short. Not only do they have a quarterback that they're trying to be the face of the franchise, a lot of new players, new coaches. Man, Todd Haley. Todd Haley is a great coach. Can he coach to his best with the camera on him like HBO? I don't think so, because Todd's got language. I mean, this is football. We are not trying to put together, what you think to be football. The way a team is put together, you got a lot of ugly things you have to say to people, a lot of things you have to be frank. And I believe with the overall media, it can help. It can prevent a team from coming together.
Then there's the idea of Baker Mayfield being put out there. Baker Mayfield has his own share of issues when it comes to a lot of cameras around, a lot of attention, and when he's got everyone's undivided attention. He's a little rash, he could be a little cocky, maybe he's not as edited as he should be right now. And I wonder if that plays a role in when you're trying to sort of rein him in, putting him out there on a national stage.
Yeah, there really is no reining in for anybody at this point when you've got 30 people in the building who are documenting everything that you do. And look, remember Baker Mayfield at the Combine said, if there's anybody that can turn around this franchise, it's me. And you make those bold statements. We talked yesterday about the effect of these bold statements of adding pressure to each one of these quarterbacks or young players' situations. And you don't want that. You want them to be focused on the task at hand as opposed to building their brand or worried about how they look or how they're perceived.
Right.
You just want them worried about football.
And listen, I was in Kansas City when Hard Knocks came to Kansas City. And if you guys remember that season, it was about 10 years ago. The Chiefs that year had drafted 2 D linemen in the 2nd round and 3rd round, Turk McBride and Tank Tyler. One from Tennessee, one from NC State. They were good friends. They're both charismatic guys. And I was very good friends with Turk. To this day, Turk McBride will talk about how he thinks that set a bad tone for his ended up being not as long as he would have liked NFL career. They acted as if those two guys, even though they played different positions on the D-line, were in direct competition. They presented it as Tank excelling and overachieving and Turk underachieving, even if that wasn't, because you have to have storylines. Any television show has to have heroes, and if not villains, you've got to have successes and failures. And so I know we're going to focus on the Baker part of it, and the Baker and Tyrod Taylor, but there's other guys. Like, you know what's a very attractive storyline? Denzel Ward, the guy no one thought they were going to take at number 4, struggling his first few weeks of camp. Like, those things, just from a human perspective, I would imagine for the players, it's hard. Now, if you turn into one of the stars, if you get to be, was it the fullback Rex Ryan loved, the John Connor, the Terminator, like that was cool for him. But there's always the yin to that yang or whatever. And so I think that's a real thing for the players involved.
But I think also, if you look at the other side of this, Cleveland wants to get themselves back on a map in some capacity, and this is basically just a soap opera with sports figures involved, and they are doing that. They all want to weave storylines into it, but they want to sort of extend outside of that sports audience and get people a little bit more interested in this Cleveland Browns franchise. And I mean, how many people really knew Jameis Winston before Hard Knocks came to Tampa Bay last year, and they got to see a different side of him? Do you think maybe it could help the organization in some way, CC? There's
no place in the NFL that doesn't have notoriety. The teams that have the most notoriety are the ones that win. 5 years ago in Jacksonville, didn't nobody want to go to Jacksonville. They drafted better players. They start winning on the field. Now we're talking about Duval County. Right. They got nicknames. They playing in prime time. Right. It's about winning. It's about having ball players. So every spot, there's only 32 of them, is a prime time spot. But what training camp is supposed to be, it's supposed to be a rarefied atmosphere that you're trying to put 90 people into an environment that everyone can move in the same direction. Now, in training camp, there's a million different agendas. Now, how do the Cleveland Browns put their agenda in the forefront? It becomes harder when you have people inside the organization that aren't about that agenda.
It's going to be interesting, too, to just see Hugh Jackson in that environment. Here's a guy who's won one game in 2 years and somehow has survived. So there must be some reason that ownership feels that he's the right guy to lead the team. So from my perspective, to be able to see some of that will be interesting. And you hear Hugh talk about it. We're proud of the way we coach. We're proud of the things that we do. So this will give him an opportunity to at least show what that looks like. And potentially, if free agents like the environment, it doesn't affect them this year, but maybe next year they'll consider it as a viable destination.
If you were running a team right now, this was your team, what do you tell the young guys?
Yeah, I don't think it's strictly the young guys. I think it's everybody who's in the building to make sure that they understand the things that they say, to make sure that as the cameras are there for a week, they don't forget that the cameras are there, because that can happen too.
Good point.
People suddenly get comfortable and say things that they really will regret and can't take back. But as much as I would imagine you try to prepare a group for that, how can you? They're
typically when teams get mic'd up outside of Hard Knocks, because I've seen everything and I've been mic'd up an awful lot, you only got a handful of guys that are equipped to be microphone and understand the gravity of NFL films being around you and realizing what your words say. Also, we see guys who are mic'd up all the time that we know they're mic'd up because they're talking an awful lot more than what they would normally do. So now when you're trying to put this team together, they only have a couple team leaders. Why? Because they're a bad team. So you just make the older guys the team leaders. So now they have these younger players they're trying to implement. So who is really camera ready? And you don't know that in this experiment with the Browns.
One other part of this, the part about Hard Knocks that pulls on heartstrings, it's some of the most famous parts every season, is when the coach cuts the players, when they do the roster cut downs. As a coach, I would imagine that is one of the most personal moments you have, one of the most emotional moments you have, certainly with some guys, maybe with all guys. What's just your general thought on the fact that that is mandatorily shared as part of Hard Knocks?
I think it's horrible. Whenever you're bringing someone in and saying, look, we're changing your life, and your dream is over here. It may not be over in the league, but in terms of this opportunity, you're not good enough. And a lot of these guys have never experienced that in their life.
First time.
They've been the best at everything they've done up until that point. So it's a dramatic shift for them. And you want to be sensitive to that. You want to make sure that you can give them, ideally, some feedback that can help them in the next opportunity. And then when you throw a camera in there, it's it could change that interaction.
Coach, sounds like you love the idea.
Yeah, I think it's great. I'm do Hard Knocks from my house.
I love it. I sit there with a dancing
it's
ball.
great
I can't
drama.
wait.
yeah.
I get it's great drama, and it's your point about Jameis. If you're a casual, not you, but the generic you, if you're a casual or even a non-interested football fan,
great
it can
entryway
pull you
into
in.
it. Yep.
I understand why the league likes it. For the individual teams and human beings involved, I get why it's a tough thing to be a part of.
Of course. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.